Hi everybody, welcome to a rather different type of video for Chess Boot Camp. I've got together 6 chess playing buddies and we're all at different levels. You'll meet us all as we go along. We've got a couple around the 1,000 mark. We've got a few of us in the intermediate range, going up to Daniel, who's my current chess coach, who's a FIDE master and on track to an IM title. So what we thought that we'd do is just try and work as a team, take on a tough bot, and we've got Oscar rated 2100, and we thought that it might be cool to just discuss amongst ourselves and try and see what the differences are between people of different levels of experience in chess, and what we see differently, how we read the board differently, how we come up with those candidate moves, how we select the moves. So I'm in charge of the mouse, and we're just going to try and work all of this out as a team. So guys, let's dive in. We're going to try and finish a game against Oscar in 60 minutes, and what? I mean, I propose e4. Has anyone got an objection to an e4 opening? All good for that. Okay, right. Okay, we're going to play e4. And I recognise this opening as the Siciliano. Okay, so let's go through, guys. I mean, has anyone got a particular approach to this? Should we just go straight forward down the line? Go for like an open Sicilian? Or go for something a bit funkier?
Element as well, I guess.
I like the element too.
Yeah? Everyone happy with knight f3? Okay,
Sure.
alright. Right, the French variation. Now, Daniel, this is something that you and I recognise, because he's been training me in this exact opening recently. So, Ed and Tony, what would you, how would you read this, and how would you pick a next move from this point? Let's talk it through as a group.
I would probably be figuring that Queen and the Bishop are able to come out from obviously black. I would probably play the London. So yes, I don't. This is not something that's massively familiar to me, but if I was playing it, I think I'd probably just bring Knight C3 up, see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. Develop. There doesn't seem to be a threat at the moment, so keep developing.
Yeah, so kind of falling back on opening principles, you know, in the absence of a clear and present danger, go to your default, which is development. Right, guys, any advance on c3? On knight c3? Are there any
I think
problems
it's
there?
right. Mainly we are gonna transpose the d4 line later on if we will play d4. So we can play now or after knight c3. It's just different move order, I would say. But d4 is the main move by far. We are trying to open up the bishop on c1, obviously, and fight for the center.
Okay, so yeah, so d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4 is like the main line, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to take with the queen because then it would be attacked by the knight on b8 and we will lose the tempo. So we definitely want to be sure that we are gonna take with the knight, because with the queen then we will be slightly worse already.
Yeah. Craig, James, what do you guys normally do in this situation?
I'm a bit worried about them playing d5, so I'd be inclined to play a cheeky pawn c4 to try and clamp on the centre, and then get the knight out behind the pawn. I don't know.
Ooh. Yeah, I've heard that bringing out the queen's pawn on the c file before the knight is always kind of suggested in the French.
But I can't still play d5 anyway, because it's always protected by both pawn and a queen. So
Yeah, so then if we take, we've got e takes.
But then again, I am very hungover. I've just had the most mental night in the last year. My auntie's 50th birthday party was mental. So don't pay too much heed to what I'm saying.
Craig, what would you do here?
I pretty much only play D4 open Sicilian games, so yeah, I would play D4 personally. But C3 is also knight C3 could have been fine as well.
Now, knight takes is principled now, yeah?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it feels like we're moving a piece that we've already developed a second time. So why is that the right thing to do in this situation?
If queen takes, then they can hit the queen with the knight on a c6.
So we're improving our knight a bit because then it's in the center, and also in the last move, like didn't play with any developing move, so therefore we are not really scared that like will be better developed since he takes d4 is definitely not a developing move. It's just an exchange, so we are not losing a tempo.
Yeah. So all of black's pieces are still on the back rank. So yeah. So arguably, like you say, we're not actually moving behind in development. Okay, knight f6. Now, this Oscar player is meant to be very solid and defensive. So, Tony and Ed, what's your reading right now? Let's talk it through.
Obviously, going for the e pawn there looks vulnerable.
Yeah.
So defend that pawn or go for an early push, which I don't think I'll go for an early push on that one.
So e5 kicking the knight as an idea. Obviously, this pawn's starting to look slightly overextended if we push it further up the board. You know, with no d pawn to protect it, how are we going to look after that pawn?
Yeah, I think pushing the pawn to e5 just invites the knight to come down in front of the king to e4, which is too close for comfort.
The main problem is that black is gonna play queen a5 and take on e5. It's pretty known trap in the Sicilian.
Yeah. So if a pawn here, queen here hits king, and yeah.
So defend.
So, I mean, a couple of obvious ones would be bishop d3 or knight c3 defending the pawn.
How do you think two knights in the center stacks up compared to two pawns in the center?
Yeah. So, I mean, knight c3 at least blocks that check threat. So we're still in theory, of course, in open Sicilian. So what is knight c3 the main move here?
Yeah, it is. I would say knight c3 here, and mainly because I would like to keep the flexibility. Moving with the bishop would be, I don't know, after bishop d3, sometimes people would like to place our bishop to e2. So in this kind of situations, I would check which move is the most obvious one, or which one is the one we will play for sure. And I guess we are not gonna move our knight to other square than c3 in this position, because d2 and a3 are just bad squares. Because d2 would restrain the bishop in c1, a3 is just at the edge of the board. So therefore we are gonna play knight c3 at some point. So why not to play now and keep the flexibility over playing with the bishop in f2.
Would there been any advantage to pinning the knight with the c bishop at this point?
It's funny, I thought of that briefly.
I guess it could just get kicked on the next turn, but it develops a piece and it prevents capture of the pawn.
Okay, so now they've brought out the dark squared bishop. Black's preparing to castle, and also this knight is pinned against the king. So
Bishop to c2 would be my thought.
Sorry, Ed, say again?
Break the pin, bishop to c2 would be my knee-jerk thought, being the bottom person here, but that'd be my thought. It brings a piece up and it breaks the pin.
And then we drop the e4 pawn.
Yeah, black takes on c3 and then on e4.
Oh, okay. So if this, then we've got bishop takes knight, removing the defender of the pawn. And if, however, we recapture, whether we recapture with bishop or pawn, then this pawn falls. Also, capturing with a pawn would leave us with doubled and isolated pawns on these two files as well.
What about bishop d3? Defends the pawn. The pin's not really a threat at the moment, and then we can castle on the next move.
Then if takes, yeah, we get pawns in this arrangement. But Craig, what do you see?
Yeah, I think ultimately we need to address the e4 pawn, so whether we protect it with bishop to d3 or push the pawn, perhaps just to get it out of the range of the knight, capturing it. Those look like two candidate moves I would personally consider.
So e5, we could still have takes, then the knight moves away. Yeah, because we don't have an option to capture the knight if we're in check here.
But if we push the e pawn again, then they can come down to e4, and then we have two attackers on the c3 knight.
Yeah, again, I'm kind of suspicious, just in principle, about pushing this pawn forward. Oh, you know, it is kind of cramping black style a little bit, but I don't see. What would I play here?
You could be crazy and bring the queen out too.
I'm thinking probably something like that, and accept this double pawn situation. At least then we're moving the final minor piece on the king side and getting ready to castle ourselves. Because this double pawns isn't necessarily a huge disadvantage.
No, you get an open file. You get an open b file.
I think the most important thing then is that we can put our bishop on a3 and exploit the weak dark square, since black has already exchanged his dark square bishop.
With that move, that
means that black can't really protect the dark squares anymore.
If we can get it there before they castle too, that would be great.
I think the main line here by far is the e5 move, but it's a really tricky line and tactical one. So it goes something like e5, knight e4, queen g4 then, that you attack the knight and the pawn on g7, black takes on c3, you play something like a3, and you really have to have some knowledge in this variation in order to play e5. Well, I think bishop d3 is fine as well, but e5 is just more challenging, and I think after e5 white already has some advantage.
Okay, so you're voting for bishop d3, yeah?
Yeah, let's go for bishop d3. e5 is just way too much fury, I would say.
Okay, knight c6. This knight's undefended on d4. I mean, would that be insane, dropping the knight back to e2 to defend this knight? Or we can just initiate the trade. But then I think b takes, and then black's got a run of 6 pawns there.
I would say to take on c6 and then play e5, and then try to utilize the d6 square, which is pretty weak in the position. Also, by denying e2, we would lose another tempo. By playing knight c6 is an exchange, therefore we are not losing the tempo. So that's a major factor for me.
Yeah, I mean that's a big difference. You know, when I watch very experienced players, there's and you know, talking about play, there's a lot more talk about weak squares, whereas I tend to think about weak pieces and open diagonals and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I can't identify a weak square at all. What about bishop e3? Develops another piece, defends the knight.
Yeah.
Quiet,
So takes would leave us with 2 pieces developed on each side. Bishop e3 takes would leave us with 3 minor pieces against black's 2 minor pieces. So there's some logic to that.
I'd take that knight for the sake of tempo, and I just went to the other room to get the whiteboard out, just noting a few things what the higher level players are thinking about. And I've already noted flexibility being one, and developing with tempo being the second. So we'll recap at the end and see all the things.
Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
I've noticed that too.
Craig, what's your vote?
I tend to take the knight in a position like this, and the second move I would consider is bishop e3, just to sort of develop a piece and recapture potential at the same time. But generally, I do take the knight in this kind of position.
Okay, so we're going to take the knight. Daniel, that was your vote as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So we capture. Oh, D takes. That leaves obviously the possibility of the queen's facing off. That this bishop, if this bishop should move.
So now if the knight takes on e4, we can't really recapture with the bishop, because then takes queen, then we have to move our king.
Unless we castle first.
Unless we castle first.
Yeah. I think a natural looking move here is d2. You know, if you worry about your pawns getting messed up in case of bishop takes knight check. It also breaks the pin on this bishop, which isn't, you know, a serious pin. Or we have castles. We want this bishop free to recapture on there, of course. Now, I'm finding, guys, that I'm tending to be comfortable with castling earlier, before I've developed all of my pieces some of the time now. Whereas I think previously I would quite religiously try and develop at least all my minor pieces first before castling. But these days I castle when it feels right to castle, because I don't want to get caught with my pants down and the king in the middle of the board, you know. So what do you reckon? James, Craig, thoughts?
I was considering the same two moves as you, Ben. Bishop d2 or just castles. I think they both are okay.
I would personally play e5 because we would like to open up the diagonal for the bishop on d3. At some point we will be able to attack black's king after we will castle kingside. Also, it's with a tempo. We're grabbing some more space, opening up the diagonal for the bishop. And after short castle bishop d2, I think if black plays e5, then the structure would be pretty symmetrical after e5, and it would be really difficult to fight for any advantage. So I think e5 is the most principal move in this position. And also, we are getting rid of the knight on f6, so if we will attack black on the king side, then it will be much more difficult for him to defend the king side without the knight on f6. So my suggestion would be e5 and then something like queen g4 attacking the g7, maybe short castle then. But definitely I would start with e5 in this position.
So let me just try and understand the master level thinking behind that. Because obviously what we teach in videos to beginners and stuff is get your pieces out into the board, get control of the board. But what you're talking about is that actually a priority here is, I mean, I guess also the idea is every move that you play in chess, you want to select moves that are going to improve your position, your overall position on the board, right? And that isn't necessarily, like, I mean, so what you're doing is you're saying that you want to prevent black playing e5 is one consideration. This,
and I would like to grab some more space as well.
Okay. And this obviously comes with tempo as well, which is definitely a plus.
Another thing is that we are opening up the diagonal for the bishop. So once black plays e5 himself, then the bishop on d3 is absolutely useless.
Black's in there.
Okay, so this blocks off. We have a little deadlock here, and then this bishop starts to look stupid on d3.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So castles now, would that just be? Would you say that was slow or just over conservative?
I would say that if we want to play e5, it will be black the one who will play e5, and then the bishop on d3 looks stupid. And I don't see any reason why not to play e5 since it's with tempo. If there wasn't a knight on f6, the situation would be completely different, since it wouldn't be with tempo, and black, will have some other moves, and will be perhaps faster. But in this position after e5, we certainly know that black is gonna move with his knight, and therefore we just improved our position, but we didn't lose any time, which is good.
Okay, so what you're saying is that actually this is more critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And particularly what you're saying about opening up this diagonal and making sure that this bishop has something to do. Okay, let's go for that. See, Oscar's taking so much time over his moves. He really ought to slow down. Okay, so the knight's been forced to move, which means that we now have tempo. Okay, so for me, obviously this knight's still pinned. Capturing the knight is not an option.
Got 2 attackers on it.
On this knight?
Yep.
Yes, 2 attackers and only one defender in the form of the pawn. So bishop d2 looks forced now. We certainly don't want to play queen d2. Right?
Agreed.
Yeah. So any objection to bishop d2?
Queen g4.
Queen g4.
The idea now is to attack g7 and keep an eye on the bishop on b4 as well. So once black would take on c3, we're not forced to take on c3 back with the b pawn, but we can take the bishop on b4 instead.
Okay, and if so that's really taking the initiative, isn't it? Now if queen g4 and bishop takes with check,
then we just take with the pawn, I guess.
we take with the pawn.
But we're still attacking the g7. And then, even we have the double pawn on the c line, we can play c4 and at least get rid of the knight on the d5. That's one thing.
Okay, so let's work this through. Queen g4, bishop takes with check, b takes, and now, yeah, black could grab a pawn, and whoopee-doo, but if he grabs the pawn, then we're going to capture on g7 and force rook f8.
And then we could take with bishop h7.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Cool. Okay. Craig, your thoughts? You go.
I like the look of queen g4 for the same reasons of looking after g7 and also eyeing up b4 if the knight takes instead. That looks good.
Yeah.
Also, the queen on g4, like if there's any kind of line where black castles, you've got bishop to h6, which kind of eyes up like a mate threat, and if they move the pawn, you can win the rook behind it potentially. Just depends, obviously, what happens on the queen side. But I think the queen's just in a good spot on g4. For
exactly. This is the main point behind the queen g4 move.
Yeah.
So
Can I just ask? Sorry, did anyone else contemplate that move? Because it was completely. I never thought about that move. For me, it seems a very aggressive move and obviously a good move. But did anybody else think that?
I didn't
see it die.
I didn't see that far at all. But so I guess what we're talking about here is actually saying, okay, there's a threat. So we said, the kids said, oh no, there's 2 attackers against our knight, and it's only defended by a solitary pawn, right? And I guess knight takes is the obvious one because pawn takes, bishop takes with a fork, right?
Yeah.
But what the experienced players are saying is actually, now who is it? is it Levy who talks about when there's a threat, can you up the threat level? Can you counter one threat with a greater threat? Or is it John Bartholomew? It's one of those guys, I think, who talks about this, like upping the threat level. So let's go with this one.
I thought about that move, but it seemed a step behind just because the knight on c3 still has 2 attackers. But yeah, I see down the line now that there's more power behind this move than defending the knight.
Yeah, so I think that really is quite a key thing.
One of the things that helped me improve just from the beginner level to the intermediate level was sort of forcing myself to pick 2 moves so that you don't get tunnel vision on just the one natural move and play it very quickly.
Yeah.
So I try and identify at least 2 before I play. And it might turn out that the second move is not that good anyway, but it forces you to look for 2 moves.
Yeah, I like that.
I kind of like bishop h6 still. Get into that little pocket.
Yeah. Actually, this one looks like quite a Christina move as well, I think. I'm not surprised that one crossed your mind, because you do think outside the box a bit, and you have, to quote Benny Watts, I've just scrolled, have I scrolled my screen? Quote Benny Watts in the Queen's Gambit, you attack like Alakine. Oh no, okay. Right. Now, guys, do we have a tactic here? Noticing that the bishop's now attacked twice, right? So is there a tactic of knight takes knight, and then black can't recapture because we grabbed the bishop?
Pin, so we can't play d5.
Sorry, say that again, Daniel?
It's under the pin. There's the bishop on d4.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we can't play knight takes.
Yeah, knight's pinned. Correct.
But I would like to ask you guys, what do you think? Is g6 good move or not?
G6.
From our opponent, yeah. The last move our opponent played.
It's weakening the king side for castling. It stops the threat of g7, but yeah, it's weakening overall.
Yeah, I think it's not worth it, to be fair. But it's true that it's not that easy to find a good move, because after short castle there is the bishop h6. So I think a few players played king f8 in that position after queen g4, which looks like a bit crazy move, but black is just saying, okay, I don't want to weak my position, and therefore I'm giving up the right to castle. So
at what point does that weaken the position now, though? Because the rook on h8 is going to be trapped in if the king had moved over like that.
Yeah, the dark squares are now super weak. Yeah, as you can see, all of the pawns are on light squares, which is a really important factor here.
Yeah.
So I think now might be good, because then we can maybe initiate that tactic that Ben said, but I think maybe that's still one step behind.
I mean, this is certainly that would be the first thing that crossed my mind, and prevent black from castling short.
We still got the double threat, though.
Yeah.
I would personally consider bishop h6 here and short castle. Yeah.
As your 2 candidate moves right now, or bishop h6 first?
Now it's important to calculate what's going to happen on the c3 square. Yeah, because black is now attacking the c3 twice, and we don't really have any counter threat in that position. But we have to decide whether we want to sacrifice the pawn or no, because we still can play something like bishop d2, and just say, okay, our position is just positionally better, and we are not gonna risk that we will lose a pawn, and we believe that the position is good enough.
What about, this may be wild, but what about bishop g5, attacking the queen? Pawn comes down. We have a little exchange here with our pawn on the e file.
Yeah, that's also a move, but I think after bishop g5, black doesn't really want to play f6. I guess something like queen c7 or queen a5 instead, just to attack the e5 or c3. And I think that the bishop then would be slightly better on h6 in comparison with g5, where it just attacks the queen, but it's all. On h6, it's at least stopping our opponent from castling.
Okay.
So, let's say this, and I mean, if knight takes, we can just grab the bishop, and I think that looks fine. And then with bishop there, we've got double pressure. If the queen's on here, we've got double pressure on f8. If bishop h6, bishop takes, I think we're compelled to recapture, and we give up the pawn.
And then we cast it.
Yeah, and I don't think, but so basically we've lost the b pawn out of that, but we've gained quite a lot of threat on that side.
What do you think, guys? Is it worth it to sacrifice the pawn on b2 for the pressure on dark squares?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the bishop on the dark square right now is probably like the stronger piece than ours, beats the setup on the queen sides.
I would say that the biggest problem for black is that once black gives up the dark squared bishop, the dark squares are gonna become much weaker because there will be no defense, So therefore, I think if black is gonna give up the dark squared bishop in this position, then he's basically dead.
Yeah, we're kind of assuming that they're gonna initiate the exchanges on the queen side here, but they may not.
Okay, so we're going bishop h6, yeah? Do it. Okay, so as we've said, black did not fancy the idea of either taking with a knight and queen takes bishop, or bishop takes and losing that key bishop. So we've had queen b6.
So what if now a3, bishop back to a5, and then b4 traps the dark square bishop?
Yeah.
I think we need to calculate a bit further, because then the c3 knight is hanging. But it's definitely an interesting idea to play a3.
Oh, yeah. There's and we've got a risk of that.
Next a5. But it's interesting because we really want to get rid of the dark squared bishop.
Yeah, and our knight here is just useless anyway.
We can't trade off the knight. Is castles now an idea?
Definitely.
Now we can't take the bishop if the knight comes down to take our knight.
Yeah. So kicking the bishop once is certainly a possibility. When bishop moves away, then this pawn is hanging. Queen can take.
Yeah, I think then we need to play b4 at that point. So a3, bishop a5, b4. Black is gonna take on c3, I guess.
And then we can capture
a5, queen takes a5, bishop d2. But then there is the move after queen takes a5, bishop d2. Now there is queen e5. So
right.
Yeah, it seems like you run out of arrows.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to top up the ink. We have a new participant joining us as well, guys. Tony Webb.
Do you think after a3 that bishop a5 is a likely candidate to be played by black? Because I personally wouldn't play bishop a5, but does that seem to be the move that you think is most likely to be played?
Yeah, there's no reason that they have to go to a5.
Hey, Tony,
hey, Ben.
new participant.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, we've been going a little while. We might have got confused with our time zones, but do you want to just introduce yourself quickly to the guys, and we'll crack on with the game?
Yeah, sure. Tony, library professional. Been playing seriously for about a little over a year. Just kind of hovering around 850, 900. That's about it, really. Got my chest fork shirt on.
Excellent. your lucky shirt.
All right.
Okay,
and
so
who do we? I know I'm aware of Christina,
yeah.
and we've got another Tony as well.
Yeah, we've got Tony in the UK. He's around 1,000 as well. Ed is also around a similar level. We've got me, Christina, James. You may know from one of my videos before, who's
maybe I'm only seeing 4 people.
Okay.
I'm seeing Christina, you, Craig, and Tony.
Okay. Well, you might need to set it onto gallery view and then just change the size of your window.
Okay.
But we'll.
I see.
I'll do that. And we got Craig in Scotland, it's rated like 1900, and Daniel is about 2500 FIDE Master. So we are ganging up to humiliate Oscarbot, that's rated 2100. So we've had a Sicilian, and currently we've got a situation where we threatened black on this side. Black's then pushed this g6 pawn, which is weakening, and we've now got a situation where we've got 2 pieces looking at this knight here. We haven't yet castled, and we're just trying to figure out what to do. So Craig, you were saying something about if we play a3, then the bishop isn't compelled to move back to b5. We could maybe have bishop c5 with a barrage against f2 possibly.
Yeah, potentially, or bishop back anywhere really, like whether it's e7 or potentially even all the way back to f8, trying to exchange off our good bishop that's infiltrating over there. I just thought a5 was rather unnatural for me personally, just to calculate, but it obviously the knight takes a3 ideas, c3, it would hang that, so that's an interesting line to look at.
I think that the bishop a5 is like nearly forced because Black doesn't want to give up the strong pin on the b4 e1 diagonal, and it's basically the only thing Black has in the position. So of course there is some calculation we need to do after the a3 bishop c5, but Black doesn't really want to push the bishop to other diagonal because then we are basically free.
Well, at this point, guys, I'm kind of inclined to castle short. It breaks the pin and gets rid of this advantage that Black has, and it almost says to Black, okay, what do you want to do? Do your worst on the queen side, because we're not in it for the queen side. We've got threats of our own around your king, and while all your forces are over here fighting over one pawn potentially, we're just going to get safe and then we're going to come for you.
And what would you play against knight c3 then?
Okay, so if castles, knight takes c3, b takes would be obvious.
And bishop takes c3.
And then we move rook b1 is then hitting the queen, right? And defended by our other rook.
Black plays queen c5 then, because the problem is that the bishop and the queen on c5 would both attack the e5 pawn, and we mustn't lose that pawn, because once we lose it, then the positions are falling apart. So at the end of the variation, there would be bishop on c3 attacking the pawn and queen on c5, and I don't really see a obvious move how to protect the e5.
I guess after we castle, we can move the h rook over to e1.
But it's attacked 2 times, once with the bishop on c3.
And then with the queen.
Okay,
it's
so
really
we're saying if we castle, knight takes, b takes, bishop takes, hits the rook.
Yeah.
Huh. Could we play rook a to e1?
There it would be hanging because there is bishop on c3.
The bishop, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
would bishop back to d2 then sort of diffuse that situation?
I think we can play queen c4 instead, because we would like to maintain the pressure over the h6 f8 diagonal.
That's so cohesive, that move, isn't it? Gorgeous.
So we want to keep this. Obviously, it's really crushing black by saying you cannot castle. You shall not pass.
Well, if we play queen c4, what about bishop down to e3? I guess then we can take with our the
Bishop
pawn.
to
Yeah,
e3.
no.
It would be hanging because there's the knight on d5.
Yeah. No. If we move queen to c4, and then they move their knight to threaten it, but we have a pawn there, so that wouldn't happen.
Oh, you think? Oh, knight e3. Yeah. That's an interesting move.
It's not a move I would consider at my level, but yeah, it's interesting. I would probably just castle at my level at this and get slaughtered.
What if we slide our bishop up to g7, then we're hitting their rook, and then we're also defending the e5 pawn?
Then rook g8, and we
Then
lose
we
a
can slide
tempo
it.
because we have to
With the
move
tempo,
that.
yeah.
And then we might have this situation where knight takes. If we recapture bishop takes, forking king, and so here it feels like the tempo is very important. Yeah. So here, if queen c4, we're defending the knight the second time. It does feel like it's putting the queen in a defensive role rather than offensive role. But maybe the attack on here isn't really on yet. We can't get our queen to f6 because of this knight. Much as we'd like to.
Yeah, queen c4. It looks so good.
Yeah.
I want to see it on the board.
Okay.
I like it.
On the principle. Sorry, Craig. Go ahead.
I was going to asking, like, what do you think Black will play? Do you think like Queen A5, just trying to continue adding another attacker to C3? So Queen C4, Queen A5, and just asking what.
Yeah, it seems that we are gonna solve the same problem in the next move, basically, after queen c4. It's just postponing the decision if we will play bishop d2 or not, or we will castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have bishop
It's
d2.
not an option, right?
Okay, so we're playing that.
That it captures.
No. So you were right, Craig.
We kick the.
What are we kicking now?
Yeah. Well, overwhelmed, I think.
But the problem is that then there is knight c3 move
Yeah.
after bishop d2 and queen e5.
After bishop d2. But we are. Is this forced now?
I think we should play short castle here and sacrifice even 2 pawns in that position. It's just all in basically, because once we play bishop d2, then black is gonna win the pawn on e5, but we won't have any compensation because there is knight c3.
Oh yeah, so that's the problem. Yeah.
So I think we should play like short castle instead. And yeah, I think that's the way how to play this position, because we are playing for attack. So I think we don't really mind sacrificing one of the pawns, which comes as the double pawn, the c3, c2. So yeah, I would say short castle.
I like short castle here.
I also like, kind of psychologically, if we were playing over the board against the flesh and blood, then I like this idea of saying I can castle and you can't. You know what I mean? Or if you imagine sometimes especially if I've had like a drink and I'm playing blitz, and I'll sometimes chant, this old football chant. You can't castle, you can't castle, you can't castle anymore. You know.
Is that the key to being good? Some good whiskey?
yeah, a bit of whiskey. Okay, so we've had knight takes. We have to recapture, right?
Well, what if
We can.
I know.
As well, I guess.
What was it?
A3. We just hit in the other bishop. That's also a move. I'm not sure how good it is, but.
What about bishop back down to d2 now? Kind of.
That's I think knight d5 then, protecting the bishop.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So this is saying, okay, well we've got one knight in our sights right now, but if we do a double attack, then black can't save both. But if takes, bishop takes, now we've got two attackers on e5, yeah?
Yeah.
And that's unpleasant. We could play this, but that's going to be two moves. So if we play bishop g7, rook g8, we need to save the bishop, move the bishop back to f6. Then it is defending the pawn, but it's still only defended once. So taking the knight maybe is not so wise. And we can't move the rook there to defend the pawn because bishop takes. Hang on, does it? Yeah. So if takes, we can't play that to defend the pawn either. So we're going to lose this critical pawn. So Daniel, do you mind explaining why you said earlier on if we lose this pawn the position falls apart?
I meant it in a slightly different position.
Okay.
Yeah. Here, I would say that we exchange the pawn for some tempos. But in the position you mentioned, I think the circumstances were a bit different.
Okay, so it's not an absolute.
No, it's not. It's not. Okay. But we need to play really challenging chess. Yeah, because it seems that black is gonna win some material. But as you can see, the king is still stuck on e8. The bishop on c8 is just gonna win the prize, Worst Bishop of the Year. So the position, it's not that good. Mm-hmm. But of course, black might win a pawn or two in this position.
Yeah.
And now it's up to us whether we would like to sacrifice both the pawn on c3 and e5, or play a3 and try to change the environment and the character of the position.
A3 looks spiciest.
So yeah, so what I was saying before is there's this principle that when you find a good move, look for a better one. Obviously, if the bishop moves away as well, we have b4, which is nice. Right, any advance on a3?
I like that one.
Okay, we're doing it. We've pushed the plunger.
And there it.
Now, my first instinct is to play b4 now, because
the knight.
Having said that,
wouldn't you just take the knight?
After b4, queen takes e5, protecting the knight.
Yeah.
So do we just take the knight with the pawn? B takes?
I also considered bishop d2 because it would
pins the knight.
But the problem is knight e2 and then queen takes d2. So black would be piece up in the
okay, yeah, because this comes with check. That's annoying.
Exactly.
So I propose b takes c3.
What do you think, guys? Would you exchange the queens in this position or not? Because it's a really interesting position here. You can save the pawn by playing queen takes c3, or you can take on c3 with the pawn and sacrifice the pawn on e5. So what would be your
What's the material difference here? I can't see our score.
White is +3. So white basically with this move. Black has grabbed on knight. We haven't yet recaptured. We've played this,
right,
and now it's us to play. So we need to regain the knight somehow. And the debate is b takes or queen takes.
What was the issue with b4?
Queen takes e5, which covers the knight on c3.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can no longer take with the pawn, so we can't take with the queen, because then queen takes queen.
I think queen takes, protecting that pawn.
But even after the queen takes e5 and defends the knight, what if we just slide a rook over to e1, or even
Queen can drop back to here, I guess.
If we exchange queens, we're going into the end game with double isolated pawns on the c file, are we not?
Yeah.
So.
And on the flip side as well, I mean, black has an uncastled king, but in an ending, I would argue that that's less of a disadvantage than it is at this point in the game. I mean, right now we are feeling very clever because we've managed to castle our king, and black hasn't been able to castle their king. But if the queens come off the board and we find ourselves in an ending, I've done this before. I managed to prevent my opponent from castling, and they just go swap everything off, and then suddenly their king's sat in the middle of the board, protecting pawns, and I go on to lose.
If we protect with a rook, then the knight's going to escape, probably, right?
Yeah, I think we have to regain the knight.
Yeah.
The question is whether b takes or queen takes. Queen takes is more conservative because we defend the pawn. We could end up with an exchange of queens. Very likely, actually. I think if queen takes, then queen takes doubling up the pawns and giving us ugly pawns would make sense.
I never like to sacrifice my queen, especially when the opponent's queen is nowhere near my king. It's not like there's any strong threat from their queen that I can see. So I think, especially with our bishop on h6, I think we would have more backup if we kept our queen.
I vote pawn takes.
Yeah.
So if we take back with the b pawn, then we're conceding we're giving up the e pawn, I guess. Because if b takes c3, you'll have queen takes e5 regardless, I think.
Yeah.
So it's like we're losing a pawn.
And then
so
we can.
You have to keep up the attack, then I guess.
Yeah, it's like a lone queen with the attack now instead of two pieces. So I think I like that better.
Yeah. So
we can.
Are we agreed on b takes? So Daniel, it was your question. How would you answer your own question?
I would say that in this position, or whenever you have the option to swap queens, just compare your and your opponent's king. If our opponent's king is safer, then of course we would like to get into the endgame. But since now it's more exposed and our king is safer, we would like to continue with the attack.
Therefore, keeping the queens on the board. Yeah. So b takes c3?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I think he's frozen, is he? Right, anyway. There we go.
Capture.
Okay, so the pawn falls.
What do you reckon the eval bar would be saying right now?
Okay. So we've lost
minus something.
Okay, so
The obvious move is to attack the queen with the rook, right?
yeah, one of the rooks to e1.
Or you can come down with our bishop. I know I keep voting to take it out of where it is, but it's another attack idea.
Yeah.
And
Looks good too.
How about queen d4?
we just
Posing the
talked
trade again.
talked about keeping our queens.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know, but I mean, it's tempting because then the queen's like skewered on the rook. That would actually force the exchange, wouldn't it? And then we undouble the pawns at least. But and black still hasn't castled his king. Having said that, we've also got an open d file, so it's kind of tempting to want to centralize our rooks now.
Gotta be careful about the a rook though, because then you'll hang the a3 pawn.
Yeah, so it's under attack from there. Oh, this chess business is complicated, huh?
Oscar's tough.
I mean, how about this as well? You know, like I know Christina's gagging to do something with this bishop, so.
She liked f4, bishop f4.
Bishop f.
Yeah, but if you bring it all the way down, where's it going to go next?
Yeah, I was thinking about this with a skewer on the queen and the rook behind it, but I doubt Oscar's going to fall for that one.
I think if that happens, then they're going to bring their bishop down to f6, and then just move the queen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even use that as an opportunity to castle potentially as well.
Yeah. So I think our bishop's doing a good job there.
But that's all it's doing too. Like we're only down 1 point, but that bishop's not really doing anything with the attack, I guess.
That's pretty good though to keep him from castling though. Pretty good job for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Ben, you said what castling is 1 point?
No, it was Daniel taught me is castling in the opening is worth 2 development points.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But also, what we don't want to end up with is a load of material being swapped and then this king being much more active than our king, who's actually then stuck here. My vote is probably rook f2 e1.
We've lost our leader.
Yeah, he might come back in again. Okay, Craig, you have the helm.
Yeah, I think rook e1 is good. It comes with tempo, and then I think what's also useful is that we try and predict where black will move next, so that you can try and start calculating a tree of moves. So after rook e1, it's useful to ask where will the queen move. So I think the queen will probably try and exchange off, so like queen c5 potentially, because ultimately we need to avoid an endgame. The fact that we've got all these isolated pawns and we're actually -1 pawn basically means we have to go for the attack. If we voluntarily walk into a queen trade and everything else, then we're just playing a worse endgame where we're a pawn down with isolated pawns. So that's why I think after rook e1, queen will go to c5, and then we just have to predict what we do next. I know it's thinking like a couple of moves down the line, but yeah, something like that. At least we've got a candidate move lined up.
Yeah.
But yeah, rook e1 I think is just like a good move naturally. It's developing a rook and it comes with tempo.
Okay. Done it.
Oh.
It was there.
Now again, I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but this can't block with the pawn.
I think that's better now because there's no bishop to go behind the queen.
Yeah.
And even if he castles, he's already kind of got a damaged structure there with the dark squares being weak.
Well, if we come down here, yeah, and he castles, it does remove the rook, doesn't it?
Ed and Tony, what do you guys think? Sorry, Tony Cruz.
Interesting position, and don't forget this guy is supposed to be defensive, Oscar, isn't he? So.
Yeah, that is a defensive.
I think I'm lost.
But this is one of those really interesting kind of middle game points where, a lot of people say, I just don't know what to do in the middle game, and it's like, I know what you mean.
Feel it.
This is funky, but what about rook e3 threatening f3, which almost traps the queen?
That's a spicy idea.
Queen has to go e5, I believe, and then we get bishop f4, and that looks nice. Hitting the queen, I don't know.
I guess the queen can go right all the way back over to a5, and then there's 2 attackers on the one.
Queen has e5.
We have a back rank threat.
I have to calculate probably pawn g5 as well, which would reveal an attack on the bishop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
That could trap the bishop, eh?
Trapped bishop.
So is it time to pull the bishop?
Finally.
But then
Maybe our last chance.
Finally. That's funny. Yeah.
It's a nice move.
So bishop e3 with threat of bishop d4, winning material. So if we were to play bishop e3, what do you think black's going to do? Castle?
Castle.
And how bad would that be? But if we pull the bishop anywhere, black can castle.
We lose the bishop, yeah.
And there's no merit to this idea. Undoubling pawns, also blocking off the open file.
I don't think he would accept, or maybe that would probably force the exchange, wouldn't it?
Yeah, can't
He
go there
moves.
because of the bishop. Can't go there, can't go there. Can't go there because queen takes, can't go there because pawn takes. Yeah, actually the queen would force the exchange. I think the queen has no squares.
Is that good, though?
Well, that is the question. I mean, on the plus side, we maintain this lockdown on castling. On the downside, we've traded queens and we are a pawn down in material. We've blocked off the open file, yet we've undoubled our pawns, so...
I don't think, since we're a pawn down, I don't think undoubling is as valuable, especially because even if we undouble, we still have 3 pawn islands.
Mm.
And with the lone bishop on the side there, the only other piece that can help in the attack in any way is our queen. Right now, anyway.
Mm. But still, we do have to do something about this threat that Craig pointed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's imminent, honestly.
What about f4? And then if that pawn pushes, we could just take...
I think f4 was a strong move for that reason. I was just trying to work out what would happen there, because now if g5, you could even take back with the bishop, and the queen's kind of under a lot of pressure.
That's clever.
F4?
Yeah. Well, maybe we can talk it out more.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. The clock's ticking, so...
Ooh. Okay.
Okay.
A hush over the room.
And that's trapped, isn't it?
No, I think G7 now looks
We have
good.
G7 force the rook to move, and then that's, you know, goodbye
escape.
castling.
Yeah, because we're forcing the non-cat, like breaking castling privileges, because we're keeping the bishop there to stop castling. But after G7, it's like we permanently remove that option anyway. So I think that would be really good as well.
Now we have bishop E5. Just secures this.
Is there also a counterattack here if we just slide the queen over to D4? I don't know I don't see how that would be more beneficial than just moving the bishop, but it's an idea. Oh yeah, pawn can move. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there. Queen's the only defender.
Sometimes I wish the bots pretended to think.
Yeah, it's intimidating when they move so fast.
Make you feel better.
Right. I can't see anything better than bishop E5.
No.
Adds a second defender to the pawn. It is itself defended. Bishop
You go in
E5 and
front,
then we
it's
get
gonna be a block
F6.
and the queen.
F6.
Then I think you have the typical end of the mid game fatigue. You just want to start moving, start moving this along.
Also, James's idea now of maybe a rook lift, but we can't do that now. We have to save the bishop. Any advance on bishop E5?
No, looks good to me.
Craig, good. Okay.
I'm just trying to see. Sometimes it's worth when the queen is surrounded by a lot of pieces. I also trying to see if there's any way to trap it after something like G3, and then like in conjunction with wherever the queen moves, like get the light squared bishop in maybe, and that like potentially bishop F1.
It does look, yeah.
But if the queen can escape, then it's maybe not worth weakening your own king. But if you play G3 and the queen moves down, we go bishop F1. The queen can just come back out to any of those two squares. So maybe not. But it's worth sort of looking at. But yeah, bishop back looks good.
And another attack we have.
That's exciting to see. They're opening up their king a little bit.
Yeah, another attack we have is if bishop e4, we can threaten the c6 pawn. If recaptures, then we have a fork on the king and the rook.
Yeah, that seems like a threat to ignore.
Yeah, 'cause well, if pawn takes on, yeah, I don't see why this threat needs to be addressed right now.
I'm not inclined to capture this pawn. I think that releasing the rook would be
We'd have a
bad
threat.
news for us. I think we want to keep this pawn and then try and just head it off. Use it as a human shield. Also, we don't want to encourage a queen trade.
If bishop e4, you're also protecting the g2 square.
Yeah. Which is currently not threatened, but you never know.
That blocks the queen's defense of f4.
Yeah.
Is the only thing there.
Oh yeah, it's true. So we can have takes for free.
Yeah, but even if takes, that's like, it kind of pins itself because the queen is right behind it. Even though, yeah, the bishop is there too, though.
Kind of drawn to rook e3 now.
What did we look at the bishop e4 line that I think Christina mentioned? That was quite interesting as well. What did we think would happen?
Well, we could have pawn takes f4,
Yeah.
and bishop
And then we can
can't,
still
bishop
take.
can't recapture.
Yeah, but we can then
Bishop
take.
could recapture because you would have a discovered. Yeah, exactly. So if pawn captured, you could recapture with the bishop because if queen takes, you would have it discovered.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And even if pawn takes, you can still take the c6 pawn with check.
Yeah.
And then the king has to move somewhere.
Should we try that? It's just like Oski goes. That was literally like 0.4 of a second. You thought we've been talking about this for like 10 minutes. You arrogant silicon. Okay.
We've got a nice
man.
place for it now on c7.
That's
That's
true.
what I was- yeah.
But you can't really drop a rook in there. We'd love to drop a rook in there.
We could also just keep going with the check idea.
If this,
Check. Fork.
we would win a rook if he recaptures. So then we could drop a bishop. So if there takes, check, king moves.
We'd get their bishop though, would we? Maybe not.
Maybe, yeah.
If king f7, though, the rook could protect their bishop.
I think it's worth trying. It looks like a fair idea.
Okay, any objection?
So we're looking at bishop takes. Just the only thing to consider is if the king moves, we then have both bishops hanging.
Where
So
can the
there's
king,
not.
where can the king move?
So potentially f8 or f7, just theoretically. But we're just now in a situation where both bishops are hanging.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to recapture.
Yeah, yeah. It's always dangerous to make an assumption that your opponent has to do a recapture.
Yeah.
I mean, we
If
could
it was a
retreat.
human, I would think they probably would. But I don't know.
So we've only got two options really if we want to save the bishop.
Yeah, we could move our a. I mean, we'll drop the a3 pawn, but we can move rook a to d1. Just
To-
kind of pile on some pieces.
To d1.
Even
Our bishop is hanging now, though, so
Oh, yeah.
later.
I'm inclined to kind of reroute the bishop round here.
the queen, yeah.
This pawn is hanging, of course. But if we put the bishop on c7, it's still defending the pawn once, but it's still attacked twice, so...
But remember, it's attacked once technically because of the discovered. The bishop takes. d6 is still on the board.
Yeah. So should we put the bishop in there? I mean, it's the most restricting move in a way for black.
And you can't dislodge it. Ooh,
We should be able to capture that pawn, because if queen takes, you've got bishop c6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good
Now-
stuff. Whew.
Ooh.
Hmm.
Now there's all kinds of tactical things.
Now the bishop is under attack because we no longer have the discovered threat.
So is that a move? Bishop g3.
Mm,
I don't think we're going to have
Natural.
rook takes, pawn takes. I don't think we'll see that. Or moving this bishop
if
somewhere.
the queen moves off the h file, we have a hanging pawn on h7.
Hmm. So, any advance on bishop g3?
It opens the king up too much.
Arcing.
Yeah.
In what way?
'Cause the queen is still there. I don't think they would swap off a rook.
I don't think they would. I think that looks okay. Happy? Alright, let's do it. Let's do it. We're still just down a pawn. Ooh!
Oh, you did it!
Oh.
Okay, I'm having that rook. I'm not even... Okay. We now have equality. Guys,
Hanging pawn.
there is a hanging pawn. Good spot. Whew. Okay, so let's just recap because stuff just got real. Okay, 3 pawn islands, uncastled king, rook still in the box, hanging pawn. We have a slightly naked king ourselves.
I think it's pretty safe though.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a lone queen on its case. Do we have to worry about this? Bishop here. So maybe it's time to centralize one of the rooks. Maybe rook e to d1, just prevent that idea. How do we feel about a queen trade at this point? Now that we've got 2 active rooks and 1 inactive rook on black's part.
Nah.
Nah.
We could still do that after we grab the pawn, though.
Any reason not to grab the pawn? I mean, the bishop's safe. Bishop's safe. It can always come back to d3.
Our pawns are terrible for an endgame. I don't think I would want to swap the queens still.
Okay, this is protected. Orpa goldfish style.
I think more important than taking that pawn might be to try and restrict them bishops getting developed, like rook a d1, to try and stop d6 with the bishop, setting up the check.
Yeah.
Do we have to worry about bishop takes a3?
No, because then we get check. We get d8.
Yep.
Okay. But we still haven't got this diagonal to use if the bishop's on a3. So we go there. The king has to come off the back rank. The king goes here, yeah? Okay, so rook a d1, bishop takes a3, rook d8, check.
I don't think bishop will take, probably.
King e7.
I'm going to say bishop does take if we do rook d1.
What if they push f5 next? Opens up their dark square bishop the other way.
It feels like such a key moment because we've got the lead in the development and the tempo. Is bishop takes c6? Is that completely mental? Just sacking the bishop for 2 pawns and getting the queen.
I was thinking about that.
It might unbox this rook. I'd like to keep that rook there as long as possible.
Yeah, but it also is a potential to like pin one of the bishops, and the queen is so far away. Like, you know.
How? So bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes.
Rook can just slide over. What about rook e3?
It's hanging there.
Yeah, that's just a free rook.
You're right.
Yeah. I did wonder about maybe like queen d4, just having a look at eyeing down that pawn and keeping that bishop stuck to the defense of that pawn. Because if we play queen there, then we do have rook e3.
I think they're just going to push e5.
Craig, help us out, mate.
My candidate moves for this position would probably be developing one of the rooks, like the a1 rook. I know you're giving up the pawn, or even like rook f1 as well, just lining up the rook with the king long term. I calculated that we can't actually capture h7 because pawn f5 traps the bishop after like queen g7. So if it has to, at least we can disregard that move. But yeah, if it was my game, I'd just look at maybe trying to bring them into the game.
Yeah,
because it's not.
If bishop
because we know that we
h7,
can't exchange queens, we have to go for the attack. There's no endgame prospect, so we have to, I think, involve the other pieces to facilitate the attack.
Rook f1 then.
It's a option. Yeah, I think either option would be good.
And we can still move our other rook too.
Okay, so threat of queen h2, king f2. It's not too scary.
You also drop the f6 pawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With check.
I wonder why, because this is a 2100 engine, so just need to make sure that you can take things like that.
Because king is just going to move to e7 or g7, and then we still have that checkmate threat, and we've probably lost the rook.
Yeah, it's not a checkmate threat, but because we've got king f2.
Well, yeah.
Hard not to take that pawn and check. That's tough.
Yeah,
then
rook to try and calculate what happens if you do take the pawn. So you'd probably get like king f7 or king e7. And then if we retreat the rook, like, are we still in danger from the queen and bishop battery? So I think if we get checked on h2, we can slide the king out like g1 or f1. Sorry.
Yeah, because I mean, one thing I was looking at is rook takes, say king moves here, then rook a to f1, but then queen here, king has to go to f2, and you've dropped the rook because you've interposed in the defense.
So maybe like rook takes pawn, king e7, and then rook back down to.
Let's try it. Let's try it. We're running out of time, so let's.
Yeah. Yeah, the king has to go to g7 to stop the move h6, I think. If the king went the other way, we could have played h6 and defended.
Rook h6, yeah?
Yeah, defended the mate, or the check square.
We've got queen d4 to defend the rook. We've got rook a f1, but like we said, that's... yeah, that's not enough.
I like that queen d4 because it attacks the bishop too.
And then we've got the option of discovered check, win the queen.
After queen d4, what about the bishop? Their bishop moving to e5.
That's no good.
Yeah, because then, even if like we drop the rook back to attack their queen, with bishop here, bishop takes queen there, it comes with check. So it's snookered. Wow, this is hard going.
What about rook over to f1? That seems like the best move. I don't know.
Still, the problem is queen h2 check, and the only move is this, and then you've actually got king takes rook.
Right.
So what about just rook f3 then? What happens?
Yeah, so I did this out. So rook f3, queen down to h2, and then when king comes, Oh, king can come to f2, I guess. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Oh.
It's a R2D2 worried noise. Okay, rook a f1. This pawn is not going to be instrumental in this game.
No.
What about rook to h3?
Threatening that.
And
then
defending
also-
that h2.
Yeah, it defends the check square.
Yeah,
That's good.
looks nice.
This pawn's still okay. Haha.
Queen at e2.
I feel like this rook's doing nothing right now. Just look, it's babysitting this pawn, and we don't really care about that pawn. Yeah, I think if we're going to, this is what you have to do when you start to get towards the ending. You say, if I'm going to win this chess game, what has to happen? Because a lot of us would just end up in a kind of war of attrition at this point, and end up just, the game just dribbles away from you. So I think Queen e2 is an idea.
Bishop f3, also an idea. With the eventual rook e1.
Or bishop d3, where it's defended.
Yeah, but I'm just looking at attacking on the king side with the, if you know, that attacks the pawn twice.
Nope. It's a shame the rook isn't defended on that square, because it'd be nice to put the rook there and then think about moving the bishop. But
Move the king over and defend it.
we've got this kind of idea: queen and bishop on the same diagonal, and then try and drop the queen in there.
You have to swap them.
Okay, so what are we saying? Rook f1 or bishop f3?
Well, did you discount your idea of queen e2, Ben?
Well, it drops this pawn.
Yeah.
And threatens the rook.
Or maybe queen d3 as well. What do we think, guys? Let's pick one.
I think bishop f3. Although, is there a check? Is there a check there with queen e3?
There is, but we can just dive in the corner and we're okay.
Yeah.
And it also lines up the queen for potential attack. But forced exchange.
Great.
Okay, I think we have to exchange, don't we?
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
I got the bishop pair.
He has the bishop pair. We're up in exchange. He's up a pawn. It's actually slightly better off materially.
Centralizing the king, f1
I
looks
think
more
it has
natural.
to be. Yeah, I don't want to go here.
No.
And it'd be nice to maybe double up the rooks on the h file as well.
Hitting the rook.
Take h5.
Looks very nice, pinning the pawn.
Can't see any counter argument really. There's another hanging pawn.
Yeah, there you go.
With a fork on two bishops.
As well. Yeah.
With a fork.
Yeah? Should we snap that up?
Okay, bishop can check. Yeah. Bishop can get out.
What if just bishop down to e2 then?
Yeah, bishop block.
Yeah, we could block. I think we're significant up in material now. We're like 3 points up in material. I think trading off getting rid of the bishop pair now would be a real bonus for us, yeah?
I think so.
I'm thinking at this point Oscar really needs a wee, so he's going to play too quick and... Okay.
Okay. Check.
Check.
And then take the
Five.
bishop.
Yeah.
He hits the rook though with the king.
Yeah, he's gonna attack with the king.
But then you could just move to h5, I guess.
That's defended.
Goes.
You could also slide over all the way to a5, hitting the a7 pawn if that happens after the check.
Kind of isolates our rook off the side.
Yeah.
Rook e8 would be a threat if a rook moves off that e-file.
If it moves off the e-file.
If the rook moves off the e-file,
Yeah.
rook e8, which would pin the bishop.
That looks strong.
So rook e4?
Probably, I think we have to keep the rook on that file. So rook e4 looks.
Rook
I don't
e4,
know
rook
if there's any other moves,
e3.
what do you think?
Rook e4 at least hits the bishop and gives us a checking opportunity. Right, I don't want to throw in a check for the sake of a check.
We've got some distance now, though.
Yeah, it keeps the tempo, protects the pawn.
Yeah, I was thinking like also you maybe had like rook d4 threatening just pawn c4, potentially like getting the rook eyeing up the dark squared bishop behind it.
Yeah, I looked at that. So bishop's... Oh, a bishop can't actually move because the other bishop hangs.
He's gonna take, they might take a3 now if you do that.
Well, not with this rook.
Oh,
Also, this bishop has to stop rook f4. For rook here, we've got bishop e4, maybe wins the pawn. But actually, then we have then we have rook f3. Hang on, there, bishop there. We don't have rook f3. Rook b4, looking at this pawn. Slightly forcing. It's an attack anyway. Oh, no. Bishop, forks,
Check.
king and rook. Dang!
I feel like we're losing.
you gotta go d3 then.
So say that again?
d3, you gotta defend the c3 pawn now.
Rook d3?
Yeah. Let them take our double pawn. You know, if they come down and take c2, then fine, you know. Yeah, now over to e3. Or anywhere on that rank.
Oh,
Okay. Now we gotta get the other.
oh, king d2 looks interesting. Trying to activate the other rook over to the f.
Skewer, isn't there?
I think it
Is there a
is
skewer?
here.
Oh, if...
Rook to f3, there's a skewer.
Well, we can force the exchange that way.
Trade.
Oh, how about bishop f5 to
Yeah.
block? But then we have g4.
What about bishop d3?
King can just move though.
What about
So-
bishop d3?
Yeah, king can move.
Oh.
Okay, that's
We're just gonna hang a piece.
Okay, well now we're winning, maybe.
Looks like it.
we can lose our rook here though. Yeah.
Yep.
You saw that. It was a trade.
Oh.
Just trade, yeah. Wanted that exchange.
Curse you, Oscar! Okay, now we've got to be careful because we've got an evil bishop pair and we know what bots are like in endgames. Okay, one option is to hit these two pawns.
Start
What do you
mowing
think our
pawns
chances
down.
for promoting here?
Don't think you can save both? Okay, you can have that pawn. We never liked that pawn anyway. That's like the
Don't
runt.
take that. Oh, actually, that's fine. It's fine. I thought there was something. I thought I'd seen a different light.
You thought there was like a...
Yeah.
Now this ought to be a winning position.
Is there any reason to throw in a check on a5?
No, I mean, I think we need to come after this pawn.
Yeah. But then he defends with the bishop, probably.
Or he can push.
Yep.
Bishop f3, yeah.
Exchange it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Shut up, Oscar.
Jack.
Oh, ow. Right, I can't go here, right?
Those double bishops are rough.
They are.
Wow.
Especially on open board.
King d1. King d1's okay because he's run out of checks now. He can't check with the light squared now.
With the rook,
If we guard with the bishop,
Bishop e2 looks natural.
Yeah, I mean, I would quite happily swap off light squared bishops any day of the week. Got rook here as well, just making sure this pawn's guarded, but it is guarded right now.
it's gonna get attacked.
Yeah, I'd love to swap off light square bishops.
He's not gonna do it.
So, any advance on bishop e2?
Totally play bishop.
He's gonna hold on to those for dear life.
Yeah.
now what about G4? Give it up and then just swap off bishops. Gotta get his king over, but we already have our king over by the c file. So he can't push the pawn and defend it with a dark squared bishop.
I might try and get a rook onto here and then hit the bishop.
Christina, was your idea to push G4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Takes.
Is that not some sort of draw, though, maybe?
If G4 and bishop takes, you could play rook G7, which would actually win the bishop.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I don't think the engine will play bishop takes though, probably because of that. Yeah. But I mean, got a 3 pawn advance out of it.
I think king is just gonna go to f6 or h6.
Gonna get attacked.
Feels like a draw already.
Yeah, I'll take a draw. I'll take a draw against a 2100 bot.
I mean, rook c6 looks natural, but it feels like a draw.
I'm inclined to want to centralize my king somehow.
Hit with checks all over the place, bro. No, there.
Now the king has gotten out of the way of this guy. So there is part of me that likes the idea of getting the rook onto the g file. It can't be hit by this bishop straight away.
No. Right.
I can hear the click happening at different points around the globe.
You think push the pawn now?
That was the idea, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we could put bishop on d3 now, ready to push the pawn and push it again. If we push it now, the king tries to follow up. No, that's okay.
Keep going.
I'm not too scared of that pawn.
You got a lot of protectors.
You push again. You have a check on the
Push-
next.
Oh, well, we don't have bishop d3 now. That's one issue.
You have
Okay.
bishop h5.
Yeah. Bishop h5 now, actually, the king can't even get close. Could attack the bishop there, but it's got the whole board to go at. Let's push.
Oh,
Oh, forked.
That's okay, because the pawn's defended right now.
But now our king is going to get out of the way. That comes with check.
Where do you think?
I think that this pawn's going to promote.
This one?
Yeah, I don't know how we would stop it unless we would just like sacrifice something.
Oh. Why couldn't we just taken the pawn just then?
Because we were in check.
Oh yeah, duh.
They're forcing draws.
Repeat moves here.
Huh.
Okay.
We can grab the pawn now.
I can take the pawn, yeah.
Then he can take our pawn with his bishop.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Now rook h7 is check.
Would that
Oh
do
no,
anything?
king can take the pawn.
Wait, rook b7. No, we can't. That would be good. Bishop covers.
Yeah, both of these are covered by the
Yeah.
opposite bishop, fortunately.
What happens if we check right there on h7?
King takes g6.
King takes, yes.
Now if we
And then what
can...
happens when you have a bishop pair against a rook and a bishop? Can you even do anything with that?
Okay, I'm doing this. King takes, we've got bishop. Oh,
You could have pinned the bishop there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say this is drawn.
They're never going to let us fork their king and bishop, are they?
No.
Is there any universe in which you can win?
Just ignore the bishop. Just, yeah.
We have to go for a king rook mate, don't we, really?
Yeah.
And try and keep everything on light squares.
This has been a grind. Well done, guys.
I don't know. Is this Craig?
Yeah.
Craig, you should know. Is this possible?
There are endgame exercises where you can win against this, but I think it's normally drawn. I just think there's certain conditions where you can force a win, but I think it's too open. I think everything the king position's too centralised for us to do it.
Right.
Is it one of them ones where you got to get the king to the light square corner or the dark square corner, depending on the bishop?
Yeah, if you can get the king stuck on the back rank, then I think you can win potentially.
Maybe.
What is now, to be honest, and it did a minute ago.
Ooh. Looking good.
So
Opposition.
I think we have to get the rook well out of the way. And then if we get the kings in opposition, rook on back rank, then that's...
Yeah. For that.
yeah.
But he can now just keep moving his bishop if he doesn't want to move his king, can't he? Can he?
Yeah.
He's just gonna chase. Is the shrink the box method applicable here?
There's no zoos long, is there?
No, that's the problem. Okay. Okay, well done everyone. I'll take that.
77 move draw.
Wow. I'll tell you what though, I've learned from that hour and 45 minutes. How's everyone else feeling? Any melted brains?
I feel like I got a lot of candidate moves from everybody else that I would not have considered. So that was very good for me, I think.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. I've written down a few of the things I've learned. If you want me to read it out,
mate.
Ben.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing. We'll go through that. Okay.
So this is me just writing down whatever the two high-rated players said. So developing with tempo, keeping flexible, taking space where possible, moving pawns to open up the bishops, favouring activity. So when you've got two prospective moves, favouring the more active one or counter-attacking move. Not overly worried about double pawns if if you can get some sort of activity down and up and diagonal or file, and identifying two moves, and then keeping your options open, not tunneling in on one move, and then looking at the weak squares.
Yeah, I think the one that I would add to that as well is Daniel's suggestion of Queen G5, was it, right at the start? And like move 6 or something like that, was we realised that we had an overwhelm situation on one of our pieces, but he said no, Queen G5, because it's more of a threat, so you're upping the danger level. So yeah, I see your threat, but how about this one? And I'm holding a knife to your belly. And that's really interesting. Yeah, well, I don't know about everyone else, but I need to go and sit in a darkened room now for a few minutes. So, thank you everyone for your input. James, this is going to go on your channel as well, eh?
Yeah, I think so.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, cheers, Ben.
Right, I'm going to take a short break, then I'll edit it. But yeah, guys, look out for this out on my YouTube and on Chess Goals as well.
Who else has channels? James, what's your channel?
Chess Girls.
Chess Girls, okay.
No.
Goals, as in goals, like football.
Okay.
He's from Hull. He don't talk right.
There's not many girls on my channel. It's 2% females.
Right.
Mine as well. It's like I'm followed mainly by middle-aged men. Which it's fine. It's fine. It's like it's my demographic. Okay. So yeah. Whew. Well, I think this has been a huge success, and I don't mind if we do it again someday. But other than that, thanks for watching.
Get our times right.
Chess Boot Camp or Chess Goals. Hope you've got a load of stuff out of this, because I have, certainly. Brilliant. Let's do this again, guys. We need a name for this kind of melee approach to bot stuff. This is now what 7.5 brains against bots.
Or chess think tank.
That's pretty good.
Like it.
Chess think tank, maybe. I don't know.
Sounds
7
good.
heads are better than 1.
7-headed snake.
All right, everybody.
Sunday 7.
Oh, thanks for taking part. We'll see you all soon.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Take care.